been in my house. I could feel it. At first glance, everything seemed to be in place. The doors were all closed and nothing obvious was missing. But after close inspection, that didn't hold up. The lamp had been moved an inch to the left. The book my dad was reading was now on the floor. I checked the couch and there was a new indent on one of the cushions. Someone had obviously been sitting there. I touched it, still warm, and there was an odour that just didn't belong. I couldn't place what it was, but I knew I didn't like it. Who had broken into my house? I had to know. I wasn't going to be able to rest until I figured it out. I started going from room to room, gathering clues. A hair I had never seen before in one.
I thought I saw a monster underneath my bed. His tongue was yellow and his eyes were red. I thought I saw a monster underneath my chair. His face was purple and he had pink hair. I thought I saw a monster in my room last night. His legs were orange and his feet were white. I thought I saw a monster and that he saw me. But don't tell my mother, she'll be scared, you see. Noah's magic key. Upon waking one morning, in a daze of stretching and yawning, Noah felt something strange in his bed. What could this be? He said, scratching his head. He held it to the light so that no one could see. Wow, he cried, it's a magic key. Noah sprang out of bed as quick as a flash. I must find this lock, he said in a dash. At the front door to his home Noah stood, prodding his key into the bright shiny wood. Oh no, Noah sighed, it's not a match. He stared in wonder at the door still unlatched. I know, he cried, for the back door it'll be. Surely here I will find the lock for my key. Once again the door stayed shut tight. Noah looked at his key shining bright. The world as I see it, by Padmini Krishnan. The smell is the only thing that binds me to the world. I smell wet grass, dry leaves, ripe fruits and fragrant flowers. I wake up to the aroma of toast, just as my stomach rumbles. Ah, my mother knows of my hunger before I do. I like my mum to burn food. I am the first to smell spoiled fruits. I wrinkle my nose at rotten eggs and stay away from trash cans. I smell and wonder the rusty old books, the fresh new books, my brother's shoe polish and the neighbour's wet paint. You see and observe. I only smell and feel. Does the breeze hug you as it hugs me? Tell me.
Mouse has become a player for the mice. I thought to myself, that would be something quite nice. So I bought myself a lot of nails and plenty of good hard wood. Don't swing just nice because they were good. I dug a nice bit of ground to make a swimming pool. It was something in the hot summer to keep them all cool. My little mouse and his wife were highly delighted with it all. So I went down to town to buy the mice a large red ball. Now the fairies come to play
posh house in the city. I'm so living in an apartment. I'm a little different to most people because I live in a houseboat. My dad and I have lived in our houseboat for 2 years now. We used to live in a normal house until my dad lost his job. He couldn't afford the rent anymore. Granny lent him some money and he used it to buy a houseboat. At first I was scared. I think my dad was too. I never heard of anyone living in a houseboat before, especially children. He told me it would be a great adventure and we could travel all along the canals meeting new people every day. I didn't want to, but I didn't have a choice.
Two of the young dragons have fallen for each other. Nothing, it seems, their young love can smother. A dragon marriage was planned by the fairy queen. Fairyland was to be turned into a place never before seen. On all of the big trees, coloured lanterns were placed. Flowers and vines were carefully, delicately interlaced. The whole of Fairyland wanted to be at the wedding. The queen was to give them both some new bedding. I myself wanted to send them on a long honeymoon trip. I bought the tickets for a passage on an old sailing ship. The leprechauns are building the couple a new house. The wedding cake is to be made by my large family mouse. The catering is responsibility of the trolls and the gnomes, many of who wanted to give the couple one of their...
I guess you think you know this story. You don't. The real one's much more gory. The phony one, the one you know, was cooked up years and years ago and made to sound all soft and sappy just to keep the children happy. Mind you, they got the first bit right, the bit where in the dead of night the ugly sisters Jules and all departed for the palace ball, while darling little Cinderella was locked up in a slimy cellar where rats who wanted things to eat began to nibble at her feet. A mouse in the grass ran about, stopping by the water spout, nibbling on something I could barely see, and didn't seem to notice me. Not realising he was trapped, he just chewed on his meal, tightly wrapped. To get the mouse's attention, I threw a pebble his way, but he kept to his meal without sway. Again and again I tried, but to no effect, feeling put off and puzzled by his disrespect. But something changed inside me as the mouse finally looked up. His eyes were innocent and curious, like that of a newborn pup. He didn't seem to mind my being there, barely gave a look, much less a stare. Then off he went back to the grass, nary a glance at me. I learnt he got glasses, and now
Jack's mother said, "We're stony broke. Go out and find some wealthy bloke who'll buy our cow, just say she's sound and worth at least £100. But don't you dare to let him know that she's as old as Billy O." Jack led the old brown cow away and came back later in the day and said, "Oh, Mumsy dear, guess what your clever little boy has got? I really don't know how, a super trade-in for our cow." The mother said, "You little creep, I'll bet you sold her much too cheap."
She's only 5 years old, red hair, freckles, turned up nose, and she has a crayon box, her very own crayon box. She opens it up and gazes in wonder at all of the pretty colours inside. Her mommy has given her a magnificent gift, a piece of yellow drawing paper. Then the little girl takes her first steps, crayons in hand, and begins to create. Colours being picked up and used feverishly down to the barest, one after another with loving care.
My name is Wolf, but everyone calls me the big bad wolf. But I am not mean. The pigs, on the other hand, are evil. Let me tell you why. One day, I was out for a walk and I was whistling. I passed a house made of straw. I stopped to look at it. I took a deep breath and I whistled so hard I blew the house down. The pig ran away. I wanted to say sorry, so I chased him to the stick house. I called to him, but my breath blew the house down. The two pigs ran away. I wanted to say sorry to them both, so I chased them to the brick house. I called again and again, but they would not come. I was so desperate, so I climbed.
There once was a man whose name is too weird, and a razor blade never touched a hair on his beard. Well, his beard got so long that eventually it wrapped 7 times around every green tree. It sprawled off of cliffs and danced in the breeze. It covered tall mountains and clogged all the streams. It even crossed oceans and all 7 seas. It travelled through islands and wrapped round volcanoes. It flew up in the clouds and drooped across rainbows. It slithered through swamps and dark, gloomy bogs. It crept over mushrooms and underneath frogs. It zigzagged through cities and stretched across streets. In the country, some used it to hang up their sheets. You may be wondering, where does the beard end? It goes all the way back to where it began. One day the old man was thinking a lot and decided to cut his entire beard off. He turned all the...
Long, long ago, before humans had invaded the land, there was a time in a mysterious village by the sea. The houses were tiny and made of seaweed, plankton, corals and seashells. The people living there were happy until one day they saw bigger people than they'd ever seen before walking by their seashore village. These people were called humans. The tiny village people feared for their life and ran into the sea. A few had stayed behind but were never heard again. The people who ran into the ocean could stay forever, or could they? At first, they fed the fish and swam around their feet. But the biggest problem was yet to come. Were they to sleep? There were few people who tried to do so but never came back. Then slowly they started to adapt their surroundings, and their skin grew scaldly and grew gills. Their hair turned curly and they had beady eyes and a scaly body.
Chester lived in a hole in the old oak tree, where he popped out from time to time to see, where he spied the crickets and occasional frog, who hopped out of the old overgrown log. He smiled at the robin who splashed in her bath, and the tomcat who napped by the garden path. And he peeped out further out when an acorn fell, and bounced off the brick of the ivy-vined well. What the crow that circled above his tree, who wandered especially the nut, the same as he? Would the honeybee buzzing so perilously high decide to alight so close nearby? Would the owl who hooted her hooty-hoo-hoo swoop down from her perch if she fancied his due? No, none moved to claim it, this treasure he'd spied.
happening again. As night settles in, creatures lurk in the dark shadows. I can't see them, but I know they're there. I can hear them snarling, panting. They're watching me, waiting to hurt me once I'm asleep. I cry out to scare them away. There's something by my side, brushing against my arm. Ow! It bit me. Now a dazzling bright light. I'm blind. I can't see anything. Calm, familiar voices. My eyes are better, and the pain is easing. I sense my parents by my bedside. I know, Mum, there really are no monsters. I'm sorry I disturbed you again. That's okay, she says. We'll always be right here when you need us. Soothing, embracing.
Once upon a time, there was a prince who married a princess. But she had to be a real princess. He travelled all over the world to find one. But nowhere could he get what he wanted. There were princesses out there, all right. But it was difficult to find out whether they were real ones or not. There was always something about them that was not quite right. So he came home again and was very sad, for he wanted to have a real princess. One evening, a terrible storm came on. There was some thunder and lightning, and the rain poured down. Suddenly, a knock was heard at the city gate, and the young king went to open it. It was a princess standing out there in front of the gate. But good gracious, what a sight the rain and the wind had made her look. The water ran down her hair and clothes.
Once upon a time, there was a poor but very good little girl who lived alone with her mother. And when my story begins, they had nothing in the house to eat. So the child went out into the forest, and there she met an old woman who already knew her distress and who presented her with a pot which had the following power. If one said to it, "Boil, little pot," it would cook sweet soup. And when one said, "Stop, little pot," it would immediately cease to boil. The little girl took the pot home to her mother, and now their poverty and distresses were at an end, for they could have sweet broth as often as they pleased. One day, however, the little girl went out, and in her absence the mother said, "Boil, little pot." So it began to cook, and she soon ate all she wished. But when the poor woman wanted to have the pot stop, she found she did not know the word. Away therefore the pot boiled, and very quickly was over the edge.